Today's video is going to be about not playing someone else's game. So we're going to learn how to play your game. So what I mean by playing your game is you might have a specific skill, or you might have a specific hobby, or there might be something in your life that you want to achieve, and you want to be able to go out there and just achieve what you want without anybody else's expectations, without doing it for anybody else. It's just purely about you and what you want. So what do I mean by someone else's game? Somebody else's game involves, for instance, co-workers, bosses, YouTubers can be a good example, and friends. But the first examples that you'll ever get of this are teachers and parents. Teachers and parents are a good example because, like, when you get thrust into the world, you might have a certain, like, some families might, for instance, want you to chase a certain career. They might want you to follow the family business. They might want you to achieve perfect grades. This is the first example that you'll get put in. You'll get, that's not a good way of putting it. This is the first example that you'll be exposed to in your life. So the parents also can follow this whole ideology of like a prestigious career. Say, for instance, they wanted you to be a doctor, or they wanted you to. There's tons of examples. Like, for instance, you might have a family restaurant, and they want you to work there and continue the family business. So the parents also have the idea of the the parents also have the idea of the prestigious careers. They might want you to be a doctor or a nurse, or they might want you to pursue a career that involves a degree. They can also have an effect on the relationships that you create in life, because if you are getting involved with other people because you want to impress your parents, then you're going to go for people that fit a specific mold. So you aren't going to get with people who are of the type of person that you really want. You might be looking for someone that's just completely PC and not look into any other factors that like you care about, and that can have like a real negative impact on your own life and the direction that you want to take and the values that you want to instill. Say, for instance, you want to have children. You could also be having children because you feel like you have to for your parents. That's another one. So some people, this isn't obviously my own experience, I'm a bit too young to be having a child, but, and I'd like children, but some people might feel like they have to have a child because their parents pressure them. I've heard this is something that people go through, where past a certain age the parents want to be grandparents, and it's, if it's not the person's choice, then it's just not going to, it's not going to be a nice experience for them, and really it's not fair on the child either, because if that child had parents that like really invested into being parents, who really cared about what values they instilled, and that they wanted to be in that role, then they'd be better off from this, like the get-go. The teachers we didn't really cover too much, but they I find they all have a specific feeling about them, where I don't know, I just found that all teachers were like very, I don't know, they're all just part of the system, aren't they? Very follow the rules, very good boy. Uh, if you suck up to the teacher, then you basically do exactly what they ask, and all of it really just prepares you for work when you're older. Because you'll find that, and really it sort of doesn't in a way, because the more that you kiss ass to a teacher, the less authentic that you are, the more that that's going to have an impact on you when you're older, and you're not going to fit into the real world properly, because you're just going to be given this false expectation that if you just seek validation from those peers, then you're going to be somewhat protected. I always found that it might not even be particularly smart children, but like just by being good in class and not being a pain in the butt, there were some students that would be given almost a free pass. Then we have bosses. So bosses, YouTubers, friends, co-workers, this is a different category. Now, co-workers are a good example where you'll compete with the other co-workers that you have because you want to show that you're competent at your job. A lot of it just becomes like a display of ego. You've also got office drama that goes off where people will just talk about rubbish, really. Things that involve other staff members. That's quite common. Or moaning. That's very common. Vanity metrics, what I mean by that is you'll find yourself trying to complete the work within certain criteria that pleases the boss, basically, or other overheads. Or you might be trying to complete large amounts of tasks in short spans of time, but merely to outcompete the other co-workers. And this is where I'll lean back into the bosses, because you also have, I've written down there, office hero. Now what I mean by that is, if you find yourself leaning into behaviours like coming into work and then staying afterwards, even if it was unpaid, for instance, this is a good example. So say you didn't even jot the hours down, but you just kept working endlessly or thinking about work outside of work endlessly. A lot of that, you'll think that you're being really, really helpful, or trying to be overly helpful in the job. That will just it'll become a hindrance in the end, because what you'll do is you'll just completely burn yourself out, and then you'll be of absolutely no use because you just have no mental energy left. And it's caused from the same thing that the teachers cause, really. I mean, the teachers create, where I found that you'd have students that were supposed to be like role model students, and they'd sort of be used to teach dummies in the class. I always got that approach. Not saying that I was the model student, I was the dummy, but what it became was you just became useful within the classroom environment, which isn't a bad thing, but it means that, like, when you're older, if you don't have a grip on that sort of behavior, then you'll just be used by corporate environments. Then you have friends. So friends are terrible for this. They'll keep up with each other on social media, where they're all basically jealous of each other. This is why I particularly try not to have a very big circle. So friends tend to be very jealous of each other. If you post a lot on social media, I notice with big friend groups, they're always trying to sort of copy each other, top each other, what they've done. And we're talking about more common people here. As well as dating, I found that in certain sort of more toxic, tangled groups, people would be jealous of each other in dating circles, and it would just basically be an exercise of trying to, I don't know, everyone's just trying to puff each other's chest out, I suppose. People would get in relationships because it suited the friend group, not particularly because it was something that would be valuable long term. And that really leads to a phrase which I don't know if everyone will know, but it's keeping up with the Joneses. It's basically people will go to any length to try and keep up with each other, whether that be overspending or having lash holidays. you'll find that people will constantly be trying to portray themselves with a lavish lifestyle that really isn't very authentic to themselves, and they're merely doing for the sake of bigging themselves up to other people. That's about it. The worst one, by playing someone else's game standards, would be YouTubers that give advice. If you're listening to someone who's like a self-help guru, for instance, now they already in themselves are very good at leading people astray because they have a social media presence that other people might find they want themselves. You might be getting business advice online, so you're not actually going out and getting the necessary experience that you might need. Instead, you're listening to somebody else who's trying to give you their blueprint, or this is what I did and this will work for you. You might have self-improvement advice, which actually isn't always necessarily bad, but if all you're doing is listening to self-improvement advice, and this also goes into self-improvement books, because if all that you do is just read books, then it's not going to actually make an impact on your life. You can't just absorb knowledge. The knowledge is there for a reason. It's for you to use. And I feel like this is something that gets said a lot, but it gets very easily overlooked. You need to be able to implement the advice that you've been given. And that means that if all that you do is just basically sit there and absorb the information, it doesn't stay in your brain properly. You have to actually go out there and implement it, and then you'll be able to get to a point where you create like an emotional, what would the word be? You create like an emotional sort of attachment with the thing that you were doing. So when you do things, it creates like an emotional memory, I suppose, like a checkpoint in your brain that you can go back to. And I think that's what's very good, especially with a lot of advice when it comes to being more social, for instance, or having better social skills. You will not be able to look at, like, you know, those videos where they analyze people. I can't remember the name of the YouTuber, but if you just sit and watch those videos, then it's not going to help you at all. And everything that they talk about could be learned just by being more open and being in more social environments. You don't even have to have a ton of friends, just being around more people more often. It'll do you a hell of a lot of good. We're social creatures, we need people to live. Or more so, we need to be around other people, or you become like a hermit. Then we've got productivity hacks. So now, I don't demonize these entirely, because I am someone who, I have a ridiculous morning routine. I do the whole like get up at 3 a.m. and right. That can be good, but it's if it's done with intention. So if you have an actual reason behind, so like say for instance you're getting up at 3 a.m. but it's genuinely because you want to do a specific work task, or you want to be ahead for the day, then sure. But if you're merely setting a timer for 5 a.m. like some people, just so that you can go around telling other people that you got up at 5 a.m. and oh look at me, it's good, I suppose, because you're not laying in until 9 o'clock, but if you're not actually actively using that time, then it's pointless. It's the same with something like cold showers was a massive one. You'd find people that would talk about, I had a cold shower, but why? If you don't have a specific why, so like, if you're not doing it because it wakes you up properly, if you're not doing it because it gives you a sense of calm, then all you're doing it for is for other people's validation. It's the same with a lot of other things when it comes to self-improvement or productivity content. A lot of it is just designed, like even the people watching it are watching it because they want to think that there's somebody that is productive or is improving themselves, instead of actually going out there and improvement is something that you do. Productivity is another thing that you do. It's not something that you can watch. Another bad one is roadmaps. So this one is very big in the programming community. I noticed there's a lot of, now they're not entirely terrible because they give a good outline of what technology stacks that you might want to learn. But if you're like some people are very worried about what roadmap should I follow, right? That's terrible, because if you don't just go out there and experiment and explore, really, then you'll never get the necessary experience that you need. And you'll never really get anywhere. You'll just keep spinning your wheels because you're like, it'll give you this shiny object syndrome, which is just basically where you keep being pulled away from the specific end goal that you're wishing to achieve, because you're just literally like, oh, look at that there, you know. And that's what roadmaps can cause. They're very bad for that, because you'll see a new shiny object and you just go and chase that. The same for content formulas. If you were wanting to make YouTube videos, like for instance me right now, if you just constantly research people who are showing you different ways of making YouTube videos, sometimes that probably could help, but you have to put it to practice. If you're just constantly watching how to be a YouTuber, it's not going to help you. More water. This is sponsored by water. Water is really good for you. It stops your brain being... stops your brain being slow. So the biggest thing that we need to take from playing someone else's game is that really we're looking for validation. We're looking to meet expectations and fit into social dynamics. So, just to recap, we learn to play our own game, not someone else's. If you play by someone else's game, if you keep listening to what other people think, then you'll find out the hard way that when you play someone else's game, ultimately it will lead you somewhere where you might have had an initial intention of something that perhaps you wanted, only to find that the goal is just completely shifted and you have been diluted. So you need to set your own goals or you will face dilution. And what I mean by dilution is the goal will be shifted so much, what you initially wanted will be so unclear to the point where you'll find yourself down this rabbit hole of just being led without the initial clear intention or direction that you initially started off with. And really what this does is it leads you into straying away from yourself and ultimately chasing things that you might not even care about, which leads to an inauthentic version of yourself. And that inauthentic, diluted, easily influenced version of you that's just desperate and distracted will just keep looking for more and more advice, seeking for an answer, but to what exactly? And what would that answer even achieve in the first place? The more that you dilute yourself, the more desperate that you become, the lower the frequency you operate on, until you become a very low value, easily influenced, distracted person. So you need to work very, very, very hard to not be led astray, because dilution causes your initial intention to be lost completely. And generally the people that are telling you advice have a certain intention anyway. They're either trying to sell you something, or they're trying to get you to see the world through their frame, basically. And that if they can get more people to see through their frame, it's sort of, I don't know, a lot of it is power games, I think. But you'll have people that come along and all their aim will be is to just completely take you out of yourself, to get you to follow them. And I say avoid that. You need to create your own path. So one way to look for this is you need to find out whether you're chasing something that you didn't even initially care about. A good example of this is if you really wanted money and you just start doing things that you don't even care about. If you find yourself, I would constantly tell myself that I was revising. I would rush my morning workouts and I would get home to revise things that really didn't help me in the long run, that seemed good on the surface. I would be learning this and that and the other, and it was so discombobulated, for lack of a better term, that none of it really came together in the right way, because it was inauthentic. And it wasn't initially what you even cared about in the first place. It wasn't what you wanted, it was what you were reading off of somewhere else that told you should learn this. And to tell you the story, that it was not long ago actually, I had a morning where I used to do these massive runs, 10k practically every day, and I wouldn't do it on a treadmill. Treadmill takes the fun out of it. But actually run somewhere, and I stopped doing that. Not the cardio. I'd just do it on a treadmill, or I'd be on a bike in the gym, and I'd rush it all. I'd be so quick, and I wouldn't be present through it. I'd just be forcing it all. Well, I was doing well, but it took the fun out of it. And just to go on a run recently, instead of coming home and telling myself that I was revising and I was learning because I need to make money, it took all of the crap away. There was something really freeing about it. That was more freeing than any amount of money could ever give me. Another thing that you need to avoid doing as well is avoid pitting yourself against others. Now, the reason that I say this is because if you're getting in a pattern of finding yourself becoming negative with other people, you will both play off of each other's negativity, where you're supposed to help each other grow. And I find this is really bad. Say, for instance, you have a particularly bad say you have a job that you really didn't want to do, or someone in that job that doesn't want to do it, and they're being negative, they'll pit themselves against you. You can actually watch it from the outside. Another example of that is in the gym. If you've got someone that isn't very good, no, that's a bad way of putting it. If you've got someone that is very beginner, or they lift less than you, you can sense it. They feel almost against you because you're picking up something slightly bigger. And we're not talking about healthy competition. We're talking about that like negative, I'll show them sort of attitude. That it's just ego, and it doesn't really lead to anything. Excuse me. Right, we'll calm down now. This is something that you'll find in very, very inauthentic, diluted, low-value people that aren't living the life that they want, and they'll constantly pit themselves against others. And it'll just literally be because jealous is the wrong word, because I feel like a lot of the time people will throw that word around, like, oh, you're just jealous of... No, these people just are unhappy with the situation that they're in, and they're taking it out on you. That's all it really is. It's nothing deeper than that. So the best thing that you can do, really counteracting this, is to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? And what I've got there is a very, very, very cheesy stock image with a quote saying, every accomplishment starts with the decision to try. Now, the reason I picked that one out in particular is I liked it, because that's how simple it really is. We'll constantly tell ourselves that there's a reason why you can't do this and you can't do that, and I can't live the life that I want, and you'll blame all of these external factors when really all it boils down to is you. You are the reason why you aren't living the life that you want. It's all under your control, and all you have to do is just try. Literally. Every single time that you tell yourself that it's more complicated than that, you're actually holding yourself back, and you're creating excuses, not because... Sometimes, maybe fair dues, there are some people out there that don't try because they are lazy and they don't want it. But if you're the type of person that I think you are, then I think you're just scared. You're creating excuses as to why you're not ready yet, and that's not the case. You are ready, and you are capable. You're more than capable, and you could do it, and you should, and you will. but you'll never get anywhere if you don't try. You'll never you'll never hit a home run if you don't swing. So spend time on asking yourself, what do you want to achieve yourself, not what you think you could do to get some money or to get better at this career. Really ask yourself, what do you want? And now I'm giving a task out. Some of you might do it. I dare you to do it, just to even prove me wrong, to say, Max, this is pointless and this doesn't actually help me, because you're a bleeding idiot. Write down, whose game am I playing? When did I start playing it? Where does this game end? And what do I care about? Now we're going to ask ourselves, whose game am I playing, to really pinpoint what am I doing right now? What am I trying to achieve even? When did I start trying to achieve this? Is it even working for me? Where does this game end? Are you going to keep going and down the same path that you are doing, achieving little to nothing, playing for someone else? Or you might even be achieving something. You might even be achieving something, but it doesn't feel from you. It feels soulless. So where does this game end? Do you keep doing this until you're like 40? Do you stop tomorrow and start something new? And then the most important question is, what do I care about? You need to literally sit there with a pen and paper for hours. Literally meditate if you have to. When it comes to creating a direction in your life, the only real answer, the successful one, can only come from yourself. So you need to start setting your own metrics. So, I mean, that's just a fancy business word anyway, but what you need to do is you need to define goals that actually matter to you. So that could even be silly things, like, for instance, are you proud of the way that you communicated with other people? Are there certain things you care about? Like, for instance, you might care about learning silly bits of history. You might want to have good social skills we've been over. You might want to be a better person overall. Might be that you want to lift a certain amount of weight. It might not even be that. You might want to lose weight. You might want to run a certain distance. You might want to be fitter, healthier. It doesn't matter. A lot of people will talk about anything as a very black and white. We all crave certainty, I suppose. So we all come from this frame where this is right and this is wrong, and it's not always the case. Sometimes two things could be true at once. And other people might be chasing or playing their own game, and that's not always a bad thing. That's why it's very good not to be too judgmental about people in the gym, for instance. So I'd say I had a period where, specifically chasing getting bigger, and it almost felt silly to me that people ran so much. And it wasn't until I realized, like, you're only really chasing being bigger for an external reason, and really the people that are running are the more authentic ones, that are doing like long distance triathlons, for instance, and it's just because they enjoy it. They're being in the moment, and they're doing something that's completely authentic to themselves, not for anyone else, and that's good. And if you can achieve anything in life because you wanted to and you chose to, then that's all that matters. You need to learn to love yourself, as cheesy as that might sound, because at the end of the day, it's just about you. Another big one. So when we were talking about the office superhero, you need to create your own boundaries. You're not the office hero. You're not the office martyr. If you constantly find yourself picking up increasingly difficult tasks for the sake of it, to try and look good, to impress people, if you're constantly going out of your depth, working hours that you might even just be staying after or bringing work home with you, and that might not even necessarily be that you start doing work at home. It's just that you're sat at home and all you do is think about it endlessly and endlessly and endlessly, and you're in the shower and you're thinking about it. Sometimes that can be good in a healthy way, but if it's this like anxiety trying to do it because you want to be the best in the office, there's something really fake about it to me. That it goes along with this false productivity thing where a lot of people will be hard working, like they'll try to, that's probably a better way to put it actually. A lot of people try to make out to the rest of the world that they're very hard working, and you can even blag your own self, so you can convince yourself of how much of a hard working person you are. And really all it is it's a bid to display that to other people for social validation, when really you should be focused on actually being productive. And specifically if you're in like a desk job or you're programming, yeah, like if you're able to code for, and get a lot of work done, that's good, but that will come from having a clear sense of mind. If you're just constantly sat in front of a computer endlessly, I find that it creates a lot of brain fog, like this just mental fatigue after a while. If you just sit there for like 10, 12 hours, the brain's going to be like mush. It's just going to be dead. Especially with like a lot of the crap that gets fed to you as well. Like even you can't even go to the search engine anymore. I mean, I know you can turn it off, but you've got the news just being pumped at you all day. You've got other people that will talk politics and rubbish. Uh, all distractions. You're constantly being distracted at the same time as being productive. So it doesn't really, like it goes down to the same problem actually as people who get too sucked into watching self-improvement videos or productivity hacks, where you're just constantly inputting and inputting and inputting. The same can be said for constantly trying to output and output and output and output and output and output. Sometimes you've got to lay back, sometimes you've got to get the rest, sometimes you've got to feed yourself, and it's not always valuable. Sometimes it gets to a point where you become unproductive because you're just constantly burning all of the brain power that you have, and you'll have none left to actually be productive in the end. Like if you just sit at a computer for 12 hours straight, sometimes like that's just going to make your brain dead. That's just going to make you completely unable to actually provide any real value or make any proper decisions. So the biggest thing is you need to stop searching for advice online. And the reason I say this is because it goes back to that point of, you know, you're being led with a carrot on a stick. They have some thing that you want, and you're just going to be told to do X, Y, and Z. And the more that you follow it, the more it's just going to make you stray from what's ultimately you and the path that you're supposed to follow authentically anyway. It's an organic thing. But if you're constantly trying to look for someone to tell you the answer, it's just not going to work. There are no cheat codes. There are absolutely no cheat codes. And the only thing that can help you is experience. You need to actually live your life. You need to be able to try things and go out there and just do, instead of constantly looking for someone to tell you an answer, because no one can come along and just tell you do X, Y, and Z. And if you do X, Y, and Z because you think it will make you feel fulfilled, then you're playing someone else's game. So the only thing that you can do is play your game. You really need to play your game. You need to find out what it is that you want to achieve, what you want to do, and do what you know will fulfill you. And it goes back to the point that the map is not the territory. It's something that has been said a million times before, but I have an analogy for this, because
ultimately, if you keep reading from someone else's map that they're trying to ram down your throat, it's just someone else's script that they'll either be trying to manipulate you for their own benefit or to impose their ideologies on you off a financial gain. And if you keep in mind the map is not the territory, with this metaphor, say for instance, this is a good analogy for it. Say for instance, you are in a car and you're reading a map. You don't just sit and look at the map. You have to take your eyes off of the map and look at the road. You have to actually steer the car in the direction that you need to go in, because the map isn't the territory. If you just sit and look at Google Maps, you will not get to your destination. You need to actually look at the road and look where you're going and stop for that car. So take your eyes off of the map and play your own game. If you've actually made it to the end of this video, I know it was very long. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with the microphone quality towards the end of this and throughout this whole thing. I'm very new to this. I'll be working it out as I go along. And if you think that you have any advice on how I can make this content more valuable, how I can format it in a way that's any better to you, that I can do anything to improve the quality, then please let me know in the comments. And if you have something that you think you could add that you think is valuable, I encourage you to make your own videos and to go out, and we need people that are being more authentic like this, that just share what they want to share and what they think